Did you say that you put 4 people in the? That's like a badass statement. So like
Well,
jujitsu, like what did you do? How did you
yeah.
put 4 people in the
So
hospital?
here's yeah. So here it's kind of funny. So it's not funny, but uh, I so when I was doing youth ministry, one of the kids in my youth group, a high schooler, he ended up becoming a special ops sniper. He's like, this dude is legit now. And he was legit then, but he's real legit now. But anyways, he heard about this thing called Krav Maga. And I was like, Krav Maga, what's that? And so we had like looked it up and he's like, you want to do it with me? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it with you. So I've done Krav Maga for like 15 years at this point.
What is
And
that? I'm sorry. It
so
sounds like something in SpongeBob.
yeah, no. So it's Israeli hand-to-hand combat basically.
Got it.
Yeah. And so it's like a practical fighting system. Never used it before in my life, just kind of use it to get in shape and stuff. Bought this laundromat and came in handy a few times there. So yeah,
Wow.
some
So did any of these altercations involve any other tools like knives or guns
one
or?
one had a knife. I mean, there were we could just do an entire day's podcast on stories from that laundromat. I really wish I just saved all the videos. It would have been an awesome TV show. But yeah, I mean, so one of them did involve a knife. Um,
And you wait, look, man, this is awesome. So you disabled the dude with the knife and put him in the hospital?
yeah. So one of the things, so what gets drilled into you, or at least, I mean, the place not all Krav Maga play, like any martial art, right? Like they're not all created equal. The place I trained at, one of the big philosophies was like, hey, if there's a threat, you address the threat and you continue to address the threat until there's no longer a threat. And so
That is
that just,
badass.
it
I
kicks
love that.
in, right?
Yeah.
And your adrenaline is pumping and you're just going off muscle memory. So, and one thing you got to know when you get in a knife fight is that you're going to get cut. And so you just got to protect the
The
things that
vitals, the
can't
vital
get cut.
stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was there a reputation built after a period of time? Like, don't mess with the owner of that
Yeah.
laundromat.
Yeah. A little bit, actually, a little bit. But, it's like what I learned is, well, and this is, I don't know, I don't know how far we want to go into this, but like,
Oh, I don't care. Let's
doesn't,
go.
it doesn't do, it doesn't serve you well to go to challenge the pride of like a gang, right? Like it just doesn't, because number one, there's more of them. And number two, and genuinely like all of this stuff that was going on, like getting into fights. And so when it first happened, I'm a verbal processor, and my wife, so she was my business partner. And so I would tell her, first of all, she knows we're losing money and feeling that stress. And then I tell her like some of the crazy stuff that happens of not just fights, but like crazy stuff. And eventually she's like, look, I can't handle this anymore. Like, and I finally realized like, I can't verbally process, with her. And because of all this stuff that was happening, it actually drove a wedge between us. And we were like, I think one of our biggest strengths is that we're very good at communicating, but we stopped communicating because my whole life was absorbed by this laundromat and everything going on and trying to figure out how to make it positive. And she couldn't hear anything about it. Everything just completely stressed her out and made her worry like nonstop. Right. So, but anyways, this, all these things that were happening at the laundromat, it was just wild. Right. It was like, one time I was, I found 2 guns at the laundromat. One of the times there was a high-speed chase that ended in the parking lot of the laundromat. And I had been parked there. There was like 20 cop cars all over this parking lot, and things had like sort of calmed down. And so I was like, hey, is there a way I can get out? And they're like, yeah, we'll move a couple cars so you can get out. So I start backing out of the parking lot and I'm driving away. And as I'm getting ready to pull out of the parking lot, like 20 cops come out with guns drawn, pointed at me. And I'm like, whoa, like I let them know like, hey. And what had happened was the dude who they were chasing ditched his gun under my car. So when I pulled away, somebody found the gun and they're like, we got to make sure it's not your gun and you don't have anything. I'm like, whoa, I don't know what that is and stuff. Crazy stuff going on
Wow.
over there.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if you know what you know now, or you
Yeah.
do know what you know now.
Yeah.
Do you not buy that laundromat, or were there 2-3 things that you would have, that that from that laundromat experience you would do? Drive by it a couple of times at different hours to see what it looks like at different, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
would you still buy that laundromat? Not because, I mean, I know you look, life is life, you have the experience, but I mean, like,
Totally.
as an asset,
Now,
would you still
yeah.
buy that laundromat?
That particular laundromat, no, only, and if it was just me, yeah, probably I would do some things different. I can tell you what I would do different, but knowing what I know now, I wouldn't buy it because my wife couldn't handle that. Like, just the stuff that happened there was crazy, and it would not be good for us to have that laundromat. So,
what would you do differently from a due diligence perspective?
Yeah. So number one, I would have spent a lot more time there, and it didn't have a camera system at the time. But what I would have done is I would have made a contingency in my offer to be able to install a camera system so that I could see what was happening at that laundromat. So that's one for sure. I knew it was a little bit of a rougher neighborhood, but I mean, it's not like a crazy rough neighborhood. But what happened, and I didn't know this till after, is that sort of across the street, there was a row of houses, and right behind the row of houses is a park. And so what happens is people get released from jail, they'd get released at that park. And so they'd hang out there, and then they just sort of migrate to the laundromat. I mean, the laundromat sort of attracts that because it was an unattended laundromat, no employees there or anything. And so they just kind of go hang out and do their thing in there. So I would have spent a lot more time sort of in the neighborhood. I probably would have talked to a lot more customers about the neighborhood and about the laundromat, and seen sort of what was going on. I would have done the financial due diligence because I came into it fairly casual, because I'm like, okay, if we're breaking even, I know I'm going to make a lot of improvements here and it will drive up business. So I came in pretty casual. I think because it was losing so much money, I needed to come in a lot more aggressive with a lot more marketing, a lot more promotions, probably a big grand opening, like whatever I could do to just drive business to this laundromat. So, those are some of the things I would have done differently.
Do you still own it today?
I just sold it, like this year, maybe late last year, actually.
So it turned cash flow positive at a certain point.
Yeah, it did, but it was a long grind. I mean, I was like desperately seeking anyone who could help. There's a stat that floats around. Listen, I'm about as well connected as anybody in the industry, and I have no idea where the stat comes from or how accurate it is. But it was a stat I heard is 95% of laundromats are successful, which I don't know how accurate that is. I think the vast majority are, but I'm like, how am I in the 5% that can't figure this thing out? Like, this is supposed to be an easy business, and I'm over here drowning, and I just cannot figure it out. Right. But I think the due diligence would have, just collecting coins with the owner when they made their collections, spending a little more time there and seeing really what the business was doing. Because one of the big takeaways was it's far easier to rehab a laundromat than it is to rehab the reputation of the laundromat. And like I said, you got to be a lot more aggressive rehabbing the reputation of the laundromat when it's a zombie mat. When it has, it's not a safe place where people feel like they can go or bring their kids to. You got to make it safe, but then you got to let everybody know that it's safe. And I worked really hard to make it safe, but I didn't really work at letting other people know that it's
so
now
funny.
safe.
I just saw a quote or a speech from Arnold Schwarzenegger. He said, "Hey, look, here's the 2 things you have to do. You have to work really hard, and then you have to advertise the work that you've done." That's exactly what you just said, right? You did the first part, but the second part, maybe not as well. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to hear this entire episode, the audio links are down below. But if you want to see another episode that we think you would enjoy on this channel, click right here.